love, love, love till I hear the breath of the Spirit flowing in me. Hello, welcome to Spirit of Life. My name is Geraldine Lee, your host, and our guest is Montel Thomas. He's a musician. Welcome back.
Thanks, Geraldine.
So with your musical work, musician, how did you come to be a musician?
It came through my family mainly, their influence on my life. Lots of my mum's side of the family, her uncles were musicians in a band. All of us play music, and on my dad's side there were lots of singers in his family.
Wow. And were they some of them professionals?
Yeah, so some of them are professional, some of them are still performing around the state, around.
Really?
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about what they do, and are they a bit of a name at some of them?
I wouldn't say they're a big name. I guess lots of musicians know each other. So in the industry, you'll get to know various people in that industry. So some of them are kind of well known around.
The musical world. And what type of music do they play? Like top 40s or jazz, or what kind of music do they play?
Lots of older kind of styles, I guess. Them being my uncles and granduncles, they're very into their 50s, 60s, 70s music, so they're keeping that alive.
They're keeping that. Oh, I ought to go to some of their gigs.
Definitely.
So, and they are people of faith too.
Yeah, so I guess it was kind of an inspiration. They were my inspiration, getting to witness them both performing, but then also always making it to church, always having time for God and leaving time for that, while also having their job as a musician and performer.
Wow, so they actually did it professionally too, as their main bread.
Yeah.
Wow. And so you also followed suit and became a musician.
Yeah, so through, I guess, their influence, I found my love of music and wanted to continue that, make that my job. And yeah, so through them. And then I joined the Christian industry, which is one of the first in our family to go into that.
Fantastic. But before you got into the Christian industry, you had a bit of a story. Did you also play Christian music at your local church?
Yes, so when I turned 13, I joined the youth choir in our parish. So that was made up of members from I was the youngest at the time, so I was 13. It was around 13 to 30-ish. So I got to meet got to meet a wide range of people.
Fantastic.
And through that is where I got my start, I guess, in Christian music and praise and worship.
Wow, wow. And how do you feel musicians are different? Because now you're also in secular world to Christian musicians. You find that they're the same, or there's more sharing, or what is it like?
I'd say we're all very much the same. The only difference being our views and our beliefs. So we're all very much, we want to share with each other and to work together and build each other up. But the only difference, I guess, is in the secular industry, they're really trying to tone down the views on God and trying to take religion out of it, seeing as it doesn't sell. So that is the main difference between Christian and secular that I see.
Yeah. And did you find that you got closer to God? You went through a summer school?
Yes, so I had my first summer school this year in 2020. And I definitely felt closer to God through this experience. It was interesting seeing it as being my first summer school. I was working in the praise and worship side, but through that and also through adoration and through one of the lectures with Deacon Cam Smith, he got into how the experience we have with God, we feel it, but we don't know what it is until we truly look deeper into it. So through his lecture, I got to understand some of the feelings that I felt through adoration and prayer at summer school.
Yeah, I can see that, because I'm, you could call me a cradle Catholic or cradle Christian. So I sort of knew God in my mind for many years, but I didn't experience God except through a summer school, where with the music and the praise and worship, you really can feel the presence of God, can't you?
Definitely. It was an incredible experience, seeing as the Rise Youth Festival was, I guess, my first really big experience. Summer school kind of carried that on, and it was like another form of Rise. That experience I felt just came back. So
Yes. I think when I came to my faith when I was young, and I think sometimes when you go to things that you always go to, like Mass, you kind of take it for granted, and sometimes you just do the movements. But I think when you go away on a camp and people talk about God's love and you can actually feel it, different to just being in the head, it becomes very significant, doesn't it?
definitely, like yeah, in Mass you kind of just learn what to say and what to do, and it just becomes a routine. But when you get out of that routine, it's when you truly experience it. It's not just something that you feel like you have to do. You want to do it, and everyone else around you wants to do it. You feel that energy in the room just build.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great experience to have everyone fervent, because you can, when I, after I experienced God very powerfully at summer school, I'd go back to normal Mass and I was like saying, oh, everyone doesn't, they're just doing the movements, but I don't know if they can feel God, you know.
Yeah,
But having strong faith altogether as young people does really touch you deeply, doesn't it?
definitely. And that's the aspect that I love, the community altogether. When you all feel God's presence, there's just this joy in the room that spreads. It's contagious, this joy between everyone.
Yes, it's that contagiousness when it also makes you want to get to know Jesus more, like read the Bible and pray, doesn't it?
Definitely. And I guess that was also one of the aspects I love, the silent prayer time that you have to yourself. Because we all pray in different ways, and we got to experience that both through adoration and then the early morning prayers. And that silent prayer time, I guess everyone got into their own space of how they wanted to
Yeah,
pray.
fantastic. We'll go for a break now. You've been watching Spirit of Life. Stay with us and we'll be back after the break. Hello, welcome back to Spirit of Life. My name is Geraldine Lee, your host, and our guest is Montel Thomas, who's a musician. Welcome back, Montel. You were talking about prayer, the power of prayer, and you had an experience at summer school, and then what happened after that? Did you find that your prayer life also improved?
Yeah, so it's been a little bit difficult, I guess, to continue the high of summer school where you're praying every single day and you get to experience that all the time, and then you come back into the real world, and it's been a little bit difficult, but it's made it easier since summer school to continue having this prayer life and this connection.
Yeah, so it's communication is more like spontaneous.
Yeah,
Yes, were you more into set prayers before and now a little bit more spontaneous?
I'd say so. Going to church as a child while I was growing up, set prayers was kind of the only way that I knew and understood until I started coming to summer school. And then they showed that prayer doesn't have to be just set. You can pray in any form that you like.
Yes, through music too.
Through music, through dance, through however. Yeah,
Yes, it opens up a lot of experiences, isn't it?
definitely does.
Yes, I remember someone saying that when you sing, you pray
Pray
twice.
twice. St. Augustine said that, yeah.
Yeah, that's powerful. And so when you do music, do you feel like, wow, it's like a real expression?
Yeah, especially seeing as, I guess I really view it as a gift from God to be able to play music and to express myself through this and praise Him with praise and worship. I really feel that it is a gift that I can express.
And the conference you went to, Rise, could you explain to the audience, because that was also very significant for you, what Rise is?
So Rise is a youth festival. So youth all around the state can come together, and it's like a mini ACYF for people who have been before. But you come together and you get lectures from various people on different talks about things such as how to be a good Catholic male is one of the great talks that I went to, or Catholic female, how we can be good people just in general in the Catholic world, how God affects us in all our various ways. And we also have the experience of praise and worship, talks from other people in plenaries. So those are big. Everyone gets to see those. Adoration, Mass. It's just an
Wow.
incredible faith-filled day.
Yeah, and what is ACYF? You mentioned that.
ACYF is the Australian Catholic Youth Festival. So what Rise is like is kind of like what ACYF is, except it's national. So it's massive. Everyone comes together from all around the country into a city to celebrate our faith as young Catholics.
Yes, so it's almost like there's the state, which is Rise, then there's ACYF, which is national, and then there's the World Youth Day, which is the
Yeah,
world.
which is international, exactly.
Yes, and what kind of numbers are we talking about with each of them?
Rise, I would say, has a few hundred coming in. ACYF, I think last year had 6,000, which was a lot.
Wow, that's amazing.
I have no idea how big World Youth Day
Oh,
is, but I'm
it's,
pretty sure that's
well-
incredibly large.
Well, in Australia, when it happened in Australia, there were about 800,000, 800,000.
Yeah, wow.
And in the Philippines, the World Youth Day, where it's similar to Rise, except it's on a big scale, like music, talks,
Yeah.
prayer, groups, and food and accommodation. The World Youth Day, it was like we lived like in schools, in caravans, on the ground,
Yeah.
under the stars in the Randwick race course, and there was so it's like in the Philippines, I think they had 6 million. That's
incredible.
massive. Can you imagine having a World Youth Day of 6 million?
Yeah.
That was the biggest. That was the biggest scale. Of course, in the Philippines, there are an amazing amount of people anyway.
Yeah.
Most of them are Catholics. So wow, who says that there's nothing happening in the church for young people?
Exactly.
Yeah, and so that also has led you to think about youth and what messages young people are getting from the secular world and secular music compared to the Christian world. Would you like to talk a little bit into the messages that young people in general are getting through the media and through music?
Yeah, I guess through the media right now, everything's focused on beauty in a sense, not overall beauty, but just the external physical beauty. Like, you only see the prettiest person singing a song on TV or in a music video or being famous. And I guess everyone feels like they're not enough in a sense. Whereas with the Christian music, what I found is it's so inclusive. No matter what, everyone's beautiful. Everyone gets their time to shine.
That's beautiful, because really beauty is not skin deep, it's deeper, isn't it? And the person
Exactly.
shines. And I think of some secular programs like where people are given a chance, like, I don't know, is it Australian Idol or something like that, where you
Yeah.
see average people shine, who usually know, or The Voice, where no one expects, and suddenly they're singing fantastically and everyone's has compassion. I think really in the world people do want the surprise people. They do want inherently to see the underdog really rise and shine.
Definitely. And I guess that's where these shows are coming up and making a difference. And everyone's slowly getting accustomed to this idea that, you don't need to be perfect like to other people. You're perfectly fine being yourself. And that's where we're bridging that gap. And slowly everybody's being included in this. industry.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful because it's not about the extraordinary. It's about the ordinary and loving the ordinary and the extraordinary. But sometimes, because of social media, people feel like they have to be someone. Like people will look at their mobiles. Have I had enough likes? Have I had enough comments?
Yeah.
And because people like the news, when you are extraordinary. So we'll go now for a break. But it's been great to hear about what's happening in your life. You've been watching Spirit of Life. Stay with us, and we'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Spirit of Life. My name is Geraldine Lee, your host, and our guest is Montel Thomas. He's a musician. Welcome back, Montel.
Thank you.
You were talking about how Christian music has something to offer, besides the community sense among musicians, Christian. What do you think about the messages they're giving compared to, secular messages?
I feel that the messages that the Christian music industry is giving is more in line with how we view God and how we, aspire to be close to Him, but in a sense not as forward as old hymns used to be. So such as songs from one of my favorite groups, The Saga, their songs are how we want to be closer to God, how much we love God. But for those who also don't believe, those songs can still touch them in different ways, and they give different messages. So it's not as forward as old hymns used to be, like, we praise God. But we read into that and we see that it's about God. Others may read into it and see that, okay, this is about our close friendships or that kind of thing.
Uh-huh. So the messages can be looked in two ways. They've got
Exactly.
Christian values, but they're not necessarily like
They're not
Holy
just
Spirit.
for us.
Like we're not, Alleluia, praise Jesus,
Yeah.
kind of. Yeah. But it's got a positive message and a godly message that cannot be applied.
Exactly.
Yeah. So have you got your own favorite Christian musicians that you like to follow?
I mean, I'm very biased in the sense that I love the musicians that I've gotten to know over the past year. So Josh Angressano and Alyssa and Georgia from The Saga, Jen Bryant. Yeah, I've gotten to know them pretty well over this last year, so I'm very biased. Louisa and Marilyn from Gus and Iggy. Yeah.
That's amazing because you not only like them as artists, but you also know them, like as people, which is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, it's honestly a gift to be able to communicate with people who I aspire to be and who inspire me. So
yeah, it's wonderful. And I hear you are doing a gig with Genevieve Bryan soon too.
yeah, in Sydney for one of the women's retreats. So
Oh, that's fantastic. And with God's message of His love, do you feel that's very relevant for youth today? God's message of love, unconditional love, and forgiveness?
I would definitely say so, because youth growing up today, we don't get that message all that often. So we can go to church and hear about it. We go to festivals, the youth festivals, and hear about it. But as soon as you leave that space, you almost lose touch with it, not being around this big group of people who are in the same space as you with their relationship with God. But that's where I feel music really comes into it, because you can take it everywhere with you. Music's always with you. So you can keep that feeling and keep that mindset with you.
And you also not only play the drums, you play other instruments.
Yes, guitar and keyboards and bass. And I use all of those in as many ways as I can, depending on which artist I'm with.
Wow, that's fantastic. So you're really multi-talented. And do you also continue to do adoration? Because you said that's a big part of your life. You worship God through adoration, which is kind of a quieter way of worshiping God.
Yeah, adoration is a great form of prayer for me, seeing as it's different to the praise and worship that I normally do. So it's nice to have a bit of a contrast and try and have a different way of getting a message from God.
Yes. And how do you also say about the culture of death? Because I know you were really touched by Gary Pinto's testimony. Could you recap with that message?
Yeah, so with Gary Pinto's testimony, at one point in his life, there was this darkness that was over him, and it just took over his life, and he couldn't get out of bed, and he had no energy to do anything until he turned to God and he said, God, I give you my life and myself. And God took away the darkness from him that was covering him. And that testimony really touched me and is what drove me into the Christian music industry.
Wow, because I think at the moment, there's a high suicide rate in Australia and around the world, especially in developing countries. What do you think this message could bring to youth?
This message, I feel, is that you're never alone. So even when you feel you're alone, there's always God with you. And through God, there's always other people, your family and your friends that always care about you and love you so much. And I feel that that's what we forget a lot of the time. So having this message with us tells us and reminds us that we're always loved by God, by our family and friends.
Yes, we can, when we look at Facebook and we look at all these beautiful pictures about others all dressed up and everything, can make us feel like, hey, I'm not like that. Or you feel alone, you feel doubt. But like you said, all people have to do is reach out, because we might get a false view, because they say that, often the models are brushed up, tucked in, and people do airbrushing or they cover it up with, but that's not the real people. The real people, have little bumps and lumps and, acne
Exactly.
or whatever, but we can still be loved. And they really need that message, and we all need that message, that we are loved, whether we have a bad day, good day, a fat day, and not so, a day when all our clothes are too tight or too loose or whatever it is. So that's really good news, and I suppose it'd be good for maybe some young people to go to Rise.
Oh, definitely. So that festival pretty much changed my outlook, I guess, on the faith. And I got to meet so many different youth who have the same faith that I did. And I didn't know it was such a widespread faith amongst youth.
Yeah, and maybe some of the people watching might be youth or parents or grandparents of youth. So when is the Rise Youth Festival?
Rise is on March 21st at Emmaus College.
Oh, that's wonderful. Do they go on a website?
If you Google Rise Melbourne 2020, it should all come up, all the information.
Thank you so much for being on our program.
Thanks very much.
You've been watching Spirit of Life. Goodbye and God bless you.
Bring it to birth and blow where you will. Blow, blow, blow till I be but breath of the Spirit.